I want to tell you about a character called Mark. On the surface, he's one of the good guys. But the more I dug into him, the more he wasn't quite what he seemed. Okay, I've read through draft 1, wrote down a load of questions, sorted all that out in the last video, and now I'm deep diving into those questions. The group of questions I'm starting with are character profiles, really getting to know my characters. And when it comes to building character profiles, there's almost too much information, too many options out there. Endless advice and templates and personality tests and craft books. I've watched some videos from writers that I trust, but they all have very different ways about going about it. So my conclusion is that there is no right way, which, after feeling overwhelmed by all the options, is actually quite freeing. So my starting point is simply, what do I need to know in order to write draft 2? I don't need to know every tiny detail about them. I don't even need to know every tiny detail about them that is relevant to the story. I just need to know enough for the next step, the next draft. And with that in mind, my focus is why. Why do they act the way they do? What are their driving motivations behind what they say and how they react? Because once I know that and understand where they're coming from, whatever I build in my re-outline, I know how each character is likely to respond. I want to get a sense of how they feel towards each other, especially my main character, Kate. Anything else that I discover about them along the way is a bonus. So today, I want to share an example of how I've gone about this. I'm choosing Kate's brother Mark, which has been a really interesting journey of discovery and doesn't contain too many spoilers. So we're looking at Mark's motivation, his dynamics with the other characters, and how he fits into the wider story. So for context, if you're new here, I'm writing what I think is women's fiction, and the way I'm summarising the book at the moment is: single mother in post-Me Too 2018 navigates dynamics at work and at home by making herself small until she learns to assert herself with the support of other women, culminating in a professional and personal reckoning. Yes, I know it's a bit long, but we're going with it for now. So, Mark is in the sphere of Kate's home life, which also contains her mother Kathy and Kate's son, 6-year-old Felix. So I started looking through draft 1 to see what I had already written about Mark. And I think the two most revealing quotes, which are from the same conversation, are: "Hey little sis, how are you holding up?" Kate turned round and gave an exaggerated sigh and slumped over. Thank God for Mark. Kate was actually 3 years older than Mark, but as she was 5 inches shorter, little sis stuck. And the second quote: "Fear not, the golden boy is here." He stood in a mock hero stance. "I'll distract her, don't you worry." So there's already a lot going on here. He's talking down to her, but in a kindly, protective way, calling her little sis, fear not, don't you worry. And Kate finds comfort in that, which I think is genuine. But it's also exaggerated a little. She's playing a part of damsel in distress and being rescued. And he's playing the part of hero, playing a role rather than being who he actually is. It's all done in jest, and it all looks light and positive and like he's actually supporting her. However, the context is actually their mum Kathy, who is very critical of Kate and dotes on Mark. So he's saying, I'm here and I'll distract her with my presence, rather than I'm here, I've got your back, I'll defend you against her criticisms. So this is my starting point. Why does Mark do this? Why does he feel the need to play hero, but not actually stand up for Kate? I sat down and did a brain dump and just saw what came out, almost like a stream of consciousness, which I did by hand. Found that more helpful and I made more progress than typing it. I explored his backstory further about this tension of being both indulged his whole life by his mum, but also being told he's the man of the house. He's being told explicitly and implicitly about what it is to be a man and to take control of a situation, but it's actually against his nature, which is much more passive. And so, like Kate, he is also playing a role he doesn't want. At the time in the story, he's 29 years old, but is still feeling quite lost in who he is and where he fits in the world. Once I'd gotten to know him a bit better, I then looked a little deeper into his relationships with his mum, his sister, his nephew, and also his girlfriend, who is not going to show up on page, but is mentioned in the first draft, and I wanted to explore that as well. I've mentioned in a previous video that Kathy exhibits some narcissistic behaviours, and in this book, It's Not You, about narcissism, there is a section on roles that children with narcissistic parents often fall into, one of which is the golden child. The golden child is the favoured child. In adulthood, you may remain in this beholden role, still reliant on your narcissistic parents' validation. So he feels both the comfort and the burden of his mum's attention and praise, particularly in contrast to Kate, but doesn't want to actively change the dynamic. Moving on to his relationship with Kate. They both seem comfortable in their relationship. She, the little girl, grateful for his help. He, the hero who comes to save the day, in appearance at least, but not through action. This gets tested when Kate changes throughout the book. And I think this is going to be one of the hardest for her to see what's really going on. None of this is coming from a place of malice or superiority. It's just the way they've been brought up. It's all done in jest and he doesn't really mean it, so Kate doesn't really see it for what it is. And I think the transition is going to be really difficult for both of them, but ultimately, I think he will feel relieved whether he admits it or not. Because if she's not playing the role of damsel, he doesn't have to play the burdensome role of saviour. And one of the first scenes that came to me when I was initially thinking about this story involves Felix. Kate is so used to hearing all these sexist jokes and light-hearted comments from Mark that she doesn't even really hear them anymore. It's only when she changes and she hears it from Felix, who is just parroting what Mark has said, that she finally hears it clearly and sees Mark in a new light. So what is Mark saying to Felix and why? Well, Felix's dad is out the picture, so the only real male role model he has is Mark. And again, Mark just doesn't want that responsibility. He just wants to be the fun uncle. And I think on the whole, he has a sweet relationship with Felix. But part of the way he bonds with Felix is at Kate's expense. Like he conspires with Felix in small ways against the woman with boring rules, don't tell your mum. And I think this is the way he has learnt to bond with other boys, being macho, jokey, and an us versus them. And the last relationship is between Mark and his girlfriend. I think it's really interesting in the draft how I made her sound like the crazy girlfriend, but also I made it clear that Mark has no intention of leaving her. He was just waiting it out until she calmed down and they'd make up again. And exploring it more now, it fits really well with everything else. His girlfriend Nikki is difficult, suspicious, and manipulative. However, it takes someone as controlling and demanding as her to put him in his comfortable position of passive participant. He is gravitated towards a woman whose chaos and control relieves him of having to perform the dominant role. And the last thing I want to think about for Mark is where he fits into the wider story. What is his purpose? And there's a few answers to that, but one thing I wanted to share was how I'm going to mirror his relationship to Felix in Kate's workplace. So in Kate's home life, she has Mark passing down these sexist attitudes to Felix, and then in her work life, you have either Dan or Cole, who are in senior positions, passing down similar attitudes to the new star Ian as part of the company culture, perpetuating behaviour as acceptable. Again, in the work environment, Kate barely even sees what's going on because it just looks normal to her until she starts changing. Same system, different environments. Right now, I haven't done a re-outline yet, so I'm not sure how the impact of the mirroring is going to have on Kate. Maybe something along the lines of she sees it in the workplace first, which helps her recognize it at home and sees what Felix could grow up to become. Kate then decides to show Felix a different way of treating women and of seeing and respecting women. I really like this link or mirroring of these two distinct worlds and plot threads. And I think it could be really impactful, maybe seeing her react differently to them based on where she is on her journey. So that is what I have for Mark. I'm happy with what I've built for him. It's not comprehensive. As of right now, I still don't have a physical description for him. Like with some of the characters, I've got a really good description, but with others, like Mark, I just don't. I can see his mannerisms and I know the sort of things he wears, but I don't know the colour of his hair or what job he has or what his coffee order is. I think maybe at some point that will be helpful to know, but I don't need that right now. I don't need that for draft 2, and I feel I have enough, and that is good enough.